yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this invitation and for being here all together. So I will try now to share my desk. And it seems that it works. Yeah, it seems so. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay,
Very well.
perfect. So I'm going to say and to talk about something more general, let's say, with respect to youth condition in a post-pandemic world, in a post-pandemic situation. I would like to say something about this new role of the local dimension, of the new role of the place in terms both of opportunities and threats. And of course, while talking about opportunities and threats, we are talking about different populations and different social and economic conditions so that the people can or not have these opportunities. And I'm dealing in particular with mountain and rural territories, as in our Matilde project we are dealing with. So the title of this short presentation is A New Compulsion to Locality, Mobility, Proximity, and the Role of Rural and Mountain Territories and Areas after the COVID-19 crisis, or during the structural pandemic situation. I would say something from the beginning. I would like to quote the sociologist John Urry. Many of you probably know this guy. In 2002, 20 years ago, he was defining the contemporary man, so our situation as individuals, as a situation of compulsion, a compulsion to mobility together with a compulsion to proximity. And of course, 20 years ago, there was, again, and even this strong role of communication technology, not like today, but in any case, despite the role of technologies, the role of remote connection and so on, this compulsion has been pushing ourselves through the space and through the time to reach the others. In this that Ari called the intermittent presence. So the globalization of an intermittent presence was something he was describing 20 years ago as our destiny somehow. So reaching other bodies with our body through the space and through the time. And it was quite clear that this seemed to be our destiny, as I was saying. But immediately, suddenly, few months ago, the situation became totally different. And in this reversion, in this radical transformation, we have been facing the opposite of this globalization of intermittent presence, that is, and that was a globalization of immobility. And of course, in many cases, a globalization of isolation, individual isolation, but also community isolation. That means immediately coming to the fact of ghettoization and exclusion for some groups, for some social classes, from some ethnical part of the society, and so on, as we are facing now, for example, in the United States. So the COVID-19 pandemic reversed and changed radically the perspective. We were obliged for several weeks, and we still are living in this limbo. We were obliged to lock our bodies in our home. Of course, if we had a place in which it was possible to lock a home, a proper house, let's say, and to reduce our movement and our closeness to other people dramatically. And of course, this was the social distancing that was the mainstreaming in the last 3-4 months. So the globalization of immobility is totally the opposite of what John Urry was describing 20 years ago, and that was the mainstreaming of our narrative for the last 20 years of globalization. But we need to remember that mobility is not just a matter of, as we know, moving for reaching our colleagues for some interesting, of course, conference or opportunity of traveling, tourism, and so on. Mobility is linked to the issue of survival at the same time. For a lot of the world, for many, many people around the world, mobility means survival, the possibility to survive, and not only international mobility, but also internal mobility. This is the issue of, this is the way why mobility and migration are so close now. I know that there is some controversial debate in social sciences, in particular, if keeping together or not mobility and migration. I am convinced within our project, Matilde project, that we need to consider very, very close mobility and migration. So migration as part of a wider mobility strategies, opportunities for the people. So for many of us, the denial of physical mobility, and in particular for people living in some part of the world or in some part of our national states and communities, this denial of physical mobility imposed by the state, by national rules and regional rules, was something similar to being cut off from everything, from all the potentialities, all the opportunities, and also being forced to a kind of proximity with the others in a context where it was not really possible social distancing within these groups. I mean, of course, refugees camps or informal settlement and so on are the most clear exemplification of this situation. But in any case, we saw a lot of situations, a lot of context in which people have been excluded, forced to stay there, but not with the opportunity of being safe, because they were obliged to stay all together in the same place. So I have a general question. Let's say, in a post or structural, I would like to say a structural pandemic situation, we are going to face a new wave of this pandemic in next autumn. I'm sorry, but this is the prediction. What will define socially and legally, of course, the range of movement and at the same time the degree of proximity with regards to different social categories and population between and within different territories. So I think that this is one of the main questions we do have to face, in particular regarding migrants and migration flows and mobility as a whole. And we are trying to deal with this issue in our Matilde project now, try to adapt our investigation to this new rising question. I'm going to finish in a few minutes, but tell me if I'm going out of my time. So, are we facing a new kind of compulsion to locality in this structural pandemic situation? I would like to use the term sedentariness that seems very old-fashioned now, in particular in Western society, because we were within a strong and wide narrative and rhetoric about hypermobility, even postmodern nomadism, and so on. So talking now about sedentariness seems really to be old-fashioned, something related to the past. But yeah, let's say that now it's possible that sedentariness will become or is becoming a new opportunity by one hand and a new threat by other hand with respect to different categories of people. What I mean, that there is a different compulsion towards this local dimension based on socially and normative determined short-range mobility trajectories and place-based proximity. This is the heritage, this is the what remains of legal and social norms developed strongly during the lockdown in the last 4 months.
Excuse me to interrupt your highly interesting speech. Are we going to see the slides moving? Or
Sorry?
it's the slides of your presentation? Are we going to...
Are you not seeing the slide?
No, it seems that apparently probably there is some technical
sorry,
issue.
you had to tell me. Sorry, probably some problem in showing the slides. So you were seeing just the first one?
Yes, but it's not a problem because it's very interesting even without the visual.
I don't understand. Now, eventually, now you see the slide?
Yes.
Now it's perfect.
Because it was in the mode of the presentation. So probably there was some problem in connection. Really sorry. I'm not going to show to discuss all the slides, but yeah, this was the first one. So I'm sorry. I'm going to send you this presentation. Now
Thank you very much.
I need to close it. So yeah, these were the slides. So sedentariness should be something re-evaluated or reconsidered. This is a possibility. So what I am trying to sustain is that we will need to decide, and we are going to decide, if we do have the opportunity, where do we want to stay if we will be obliged in some way to remain in a physical place, in a physical location for a long period of time, or during the peak of the pandemic, and so on. But on the other side, we are in the condition of some of us, some part of the population, being obliged to stay and to reside and to be sedentary in some portion of the globe or in some part of our national states. So we do not have the same opportunities, this is clear, as it is for the access to internet and to the connection, as we all know. But in particular, it's possible that sedentariness will become and is becoming an opportunity or a treat for different part of the population and of the world. So just going to an end, what I am saying is that we will have, and we had some part of the world sedentary by force during the peak of the pandemic, but also this is a provision. It's something that is going to happen, or probably will happen in several parts of the world. So you know that international migration is subject to structural policies of even more drastic containment due to safety reasons, to health reasons. In Italy, for example, you know, our national harbors have been declared unsafe for health reasons, but of course, this was a strategy for avoiding receiving other asylum seekers from the Mediterranean. So for millions of people, this will be a new distinction between inside and outside, and a kind of a mass social distancing strategy connected to the anti-COVID-19 measures. So these people will be sedentary by force, and they have been sedentary by force, even within our European countries, not only refugees, but for example, all the issue about Roma camps and all the issue about suburbia in metropolitan areas. At the same time, I have to say that sedentary can also be by choice. There is also an opportunity in particular in mountain and rural and remote regions, at certain conditions, there is an opportunity of choosing to be sedentary because you have the means, the opportunities, and the possibilities, for example, for smart working, for short-term mobility, but you can rely on local economy, local products. You can afford to live there. And we have a strong debate now in Italy, for example, about this point, coming back to rural life, to mountain villages and so on. But of course, it's very different if I am a professional, I am an architect, I am a researcher, or I am a migrant living there because I am obliged somehow to stay there. So less densely populated areas represent an opportunity for a part of the population, while at the same time they are a risk, a threat for other component of our societies. So, going to an end, a new role for EU inner and mountain areas in a post-emergency is possible, of course. There are a lot of opportunities, and we are dealing with these opportunities in our Matilde regions in these first months of research with our case studies. There are opportunities in terms of using and managing social distancing, profiting from low population density, profiting from the scattered villages, profiting of the reuse of abandoned or underused villages, of even second homes. There is a strong debate about this issue of second homes and second homers in Scandinavian countries, for example. And of course, opportunities about local participation, taking care of their place, sustainable lifestyles, and even different forms of proximity based on this new and rediscovered role of local community. So a lot of interesting things, but you need to have the opportunity to choose this. In Italy, we have this movement from since 20 years, let's say, we call Nuovi Montanari, new highlanders, a kind of new rurals, and they are with high level of education. They often have quite good economic resources. They can profit from national and international networks, connection between urban and rural areas. They are entrepreneurs of themselves and so on. Okay, so they can gain something by this situation. But of course, for migrants, it's totally different. So I'm going to close with this last slide. And I'm sorry that we lost the previous one, but I will send the presentation to you if you like. So when and how this new compulsion to locality can turn into an opportunity or become, of course, a new threat. So which kind of policies are necessary for strengthening this opportunity? And of course, these last questions are dealing with our issue of, in particular, international migration. So who can take advantage from these opportunities offered by these mountain and rural territories? Or this will become once again a matter of social injustice, social differentiation, inequality? Who will be excluded or already has been excluded by these opportunities? And finally, which kind of policies are necessary at EU level while discussing about European Union to transform this compulsion to locality into an inclusive opportunity? This is also part of our Matilde project because we would like to deal with this. So how to offer this opportunity to internal migrants, international migrants, and these different kind of population. Thank you very much.